My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the armrests of the polished leather chair. Not from fear, not from weakness, but from a cold, simmering anger I'd kept banked for too long. Across the mahogany desk sat Mr. Henderson, the family lawyer, a man whose face I'd known since he was a young associate. Next to him, my son, Michael, leaned back, a smug, entitled smirk playing on his lips. His eyes, usually a familiar hazel, now seemed narrowed and sharp, like a hawk circling its prey. I was the prey. Dad, let's be realistic here, Michael said, his voice dripping with faint concern. We all love you, but lately you've been, well, a little confused, missing appointments, forgetting things. It's only sensible for me to take over the power of attorney, just to make sure everything's handled properly. My blood ran cold. Confused. That word. It hung in the air, heavy and demeaning. He said it with such casual disregard, as if I weren't even sitting there, as if I were a piece of furniture, an obstacle. Mr. Henderson shifted uncomfortably, clearing his throat. He avoided my gaze, which only confirmed what I already suspected. Michael had been talking to him behind my back, laying the groundwork, painting a picture of a frail, senile old man losing his grip. I looked at Michael, truly looked at him. The expensive suit, the confident posture, the way he gestured with his hands, hands that had once held mine so tightly, a small boy trusting his father. When did that trust fracture? When did the love turn into a calculation? It wasn't a sudden thing, this shift. It had been a slow, insidious creep, like ivy strangling a tree, one vine at a time, until the old growth was smothered. It started subtly after your mother, my dear Mary, passed. Michael would help with the bills. Then he started suggesting I sell the big house, move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. He'd talk about my legacy, about protecting my assets, but always, beneath the veneer of care, I sensed a keen hunger, a desire to control what he saw as his inheritance, not my life savings. He stopped calling just to chat. His calls were always about something practical, something financial. Did you remember to pay the property taxes, Dad? Are you sure you want to keep that old car? It's a gas guzzler. Each question, each suggestion, a tiny chip at my independence. He'd arrive unannounced, letting himself in with the spare key I'd given him years ago. Just in case of emergency, he'd poke around, look through my mail, even open the refrigerator. Are you eating enough, Dad? This yogurt is expired. Always that tone of mild exasperation, as if I were a child who couldn't be left alone. The worst was Christmas. Last year, he and his wife Sarah invited me to their house, a rare invitation. I bought a thoughtful gift for each grandchild, for Michael and Sarah. I even baked Mary's famous fruit cake, knowing how much Michael used to love it. But when I arrived, I felt like an obligation, not a guest. Sarah whisked the fruit cake away to the kitchen, only to return with the store-bought dessert for dinner. Michael barely looked up from his phone. Dad, good you're here. We need to talk about your investments. In front of the children, in front of Sarah's family, who were also there. They all heard it. My investments. Never about my health, my day, my memories of Mary. That night, I barely slept. I lay in the guest room, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. I wasn't just old. I was becoming an inconvenience, a burden, a means to an end. That's when the seed of a decision began to sprout in my mind. A quiet, firm resolution. I started observing Michael more closely, his quick temper when I disagreed, his dismissive wave of the hand, his knowing glances at Sarah when I told a story that might have gone on a little too long. I wasn't confused. Not really. I was watching, listening, learning. He began bringing up the power of attorney more frequently. It's just a formality, Dad, for your peace of mind. What if something happens to you? He'd press relentlessly. I'd always found an excuse. I need to think about it. I'll review the documents later. But his insistence grew. He even booked this meeting with Mr. Henderson, presenting it as a good opportunity to sort things out, Dad. He'd already filled out the forms, had them printed, ready for my signature. He simply expected me to show up and sign. And here we were, the climax of his slow, steady campaign. He was so confident, so sure of his victory. He thought he had me cornered. An old man, grieving for his wife, supposedly losing his faculties, pushed into a corner by his own flesh and blood. Mr. Henderson, finally meeting my gaze, offered a weak apologetic smile. Mr. Peterson, your son makes a valid point about planning for the future. It's a very common practice. Common, perhaps, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, but not always necessary in the way Michael suggests. Michael chuckled, a short patronizing sound. Dad, honestly, you're not seeing things clearly. What's the alternative? You want to end up in some state facility or have strangers making decisions for you? He leaned forward, pressing his point. This isn't about control, Dad. It's about ensuring your well-being. And my well-being, frankly. I can't be dealing with your finances if you're not capable. He actually used the word capable. My face remained impassive, but inside, a storm was brewing. The humiliation was a hot brand on my skin. He was dismissing my entire life, my decades of hard work, my intelligence, my autonomy, all to serve his own agenda. He thought I was a puppet, easily manipulated, easily fooled. He thought I hadn't noticed his greedy eyes lingering on my house, on my bank statements. I took a deep breath. Michael, I said, my voice calm, I appreciate your concern. Truly, but I believe I am perfectly capable of handling my own affairs. Dad, with all due respect, that's simply not true, he scoffed, waving his hand again, dismissing my words as the ramblings of a confused old man. You're forgetting things, mixing up dates. You nearly left the stove on last week. He embellished, of course, exaggerated a minor oversight into a grand failure. Mr. Henderson shifted again, looking from Michael to me, sensing the tension. Perhaps, Mr. Peterson, we could just review the documents. They're standard forms. Oh, I've reviewed documents, Mr. Henderson, I replied, a small knowing smile finally touching my lips. More than you know. Michael laughed, an open, mocking laugh. Reviewed what, Dad? Your old fishing magazines? That was it. The final straw. The moment his disrespect became an open insult, I reached into my briefcase, which had been sitting silently by my feet. It was an old, worn leather briefcase, a gift from Mary on my 50th birthday. Michael probably thought it contained my lunch, or perhaps some old newspaper clippings. I pulled out a crisp, official-looking document. It had a neat blue ribbon tied around it, and a notary seal clearly visible. I laid it on the desk, sliding it across to Mr. Henderson first. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice clear and firm, I believe you'll find this in order. Mr. Henderson picked up the document, his brow furrowing as he read the title. His eyes widened, and he glanced sharply at Michael, then back at me. A flicker of genuine surprise, perhaps even admiration, crossed his face. Michael, still oblivious, leaned over, trying to read the document from his seat. What is that, Dad? Some old insurance policy? No, Michael, I said, watching his face intently. It's my power of attorney. He frowned. Then a look of dawning comprehension, mixed with utter disbelief, spread across his features. He snatched the document from Mr. Henderson's hand, his eyes scanning the page, searching for a flaw, a mistake. This isn't right, he stammered, his voice losing its confident edge. This isn't. I don't recognize this signature. He pointed to my name, clearly and boldly signed. Oh, it's my signature, all right, I confirmed. And it's quite legitimate. Dated 6 months ago, witnessed, and notarized. As you can see, I've appointed an executor for my estate and a durable power of attorney for my medical and financial decisions. Michael's eyes darted down to the appointed agent's name. His jaw dropped. He looked like he'd been slapped. But, but this isn't me, he gasped, his voice a bewildered whisper. This is your sister, Aunt Susan? I leaned back, finally allowing myself a small internal sigh of satisfaction. That's right, Michael. Your Aunt Susan. She's always been a sensible woman, and she actually cares about my well being, not just my bank balance. The silence in the room was deafening. Michael stared at the document, then at me, then at Mr. Henderson, as if searching for an explanation, a trick, a way out of this sudden, unexpected defeat. His face, usually so composed, was now a mask of shock and betrayal. He had planned this meeting meticulously, set his trap, and walked straight into one of his own. The tables had turned, swiftly and completely. He had called me confused, and in that very hour I had shown him my true power, the power of foresight, of quiet observation, and of knowing precisely when to play my own hand. The game, it seemed, had only just begun. The subtle changes began to multiply. It started with small things, easy to dismiss at first. My son, Mark, would drop by more often, not for a chat or a cup of coffee like he used to. His visits had a new purpose, a watchful purpose. He'd walk through the house, his gaze lingering on my things, the antique clock my wife loved, the old armchair where I read. Each glance felt like an inventory, a silent assessment of what might soon be his. Then came the questions, innocent at first. Dad, have you paid the electricity bill? Are you sure you remembered to lock the back door last night? They weren't questions seeking information. They were tests, probes, to see if my mind was slipping. I wasn't confused. I was watching. Every word, every glance, every calculated sigh. One afternoon, he came with a folder, thick, official looking. Dad, he said, his voice dripping with forced sweetness. I'm just trying to help you. These bills, they can be complicated. He took my bank statements, spread them out on the kitchen table. His finger traced lines of numbers. He frowned. He tutted. Why did you spend this on that old book? He asked, his tone implying I'd made a grave error. And this much on groceries. Are you sure you're keeping track? I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. It wasn't about the money. It was about control, about making me feel incompetent. Small. I remembered my friend, Arthur. His children had swooped in, declared him unable to manage his affairs. They sold his house, put him in a home. He died a year later, broken-hearted. That fear, once a distant whisper, now echoed in my empty halls. I would not become Arthur. Mark started managing things for me, or so he said. Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle the gardener this month. I've set up your prescriptions for delivery, so you don't have to bother. Each help chipped away at my independence. Each favor tightened an invisible leash around my neck. He started intercepting my mail. Just sorting through it for you, Dad. So much junk these days. But then, some letters never reached me. Invitations from old friends, notices about my investments. They simply disappeared. One day my credit card stopped working at the grocery store. It was humiliating. The cashier stared. I fumbled. I called Mark. Oh, Dad, a glitch, probably. I'll look into it. He made it sound like my fault, like I was clumsy with technology. The card was reinstated a day later, but the message was clear. Someone else was pulling the strings. My sleep grew restless. The face of my wife, Martha, would appear in my dreams, her eyes full of worry. She'd always trusted me to protect our future, our home, our legacy. I couldn't fail her even now. My mind, far from being confused, was sharpening. I started making my own quiet decisions. My first step was small. I called an old colleague, someone I trusted deeply, a retired judge named Margaret. We had shared many cases, many confidences. I explained my predicament, choosing my words carefully. I didn't want to sound like a senile old man. She listened, really listened. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, clear. "John," she said, using my old nickname, "you have rights, and you have options." She recommended a lawyer, not a big flashy firm like Mark's, a smaller office, discreet, known for helping elders like me. I made an appointment, telling Mark I was visiting an old friend from the golf club. A white lie, but a necessary one. The lawyer's office was quiet. The air smelled of old books and dignity. Mr. Harrison was a kind man, with thoughtful eyes. I sat across from him, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I laid out my story, the fear, the subtle indignities, the tightening grip of my own son, the chilling thought of Arthur. "I need to protect myself," I told him, my voice firm. "I need to ensure my choices remain my own, my home, my money, my life." He nodded slowly. "Mr. Davies," he said, "we can draft a power of attorney that protects your interests, one that grants you the authority, and crucially, one that revokes any other existing or future POAs unless you specifically authorize them." It felt like a lifeline, like building a fortress wall around myself, brick by brick. We worked through the details, every clause, every stipulation, my choices, my wishes, my peace of mind. It was all laid out, clear as day. I chose a trusted friend, outside of my immediate family, to be my agent should the need ever arise. Not Mark, never Mark. When the documents were finalized, signed, and legally binding, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. A heavy, suffocating weight. I held the official papers in my hands, my shield, my silent weapon. I paid Mr. Harrison with a check from my own account, one Mark hadn't discovered. I tucked the power of attorney deep inside a forgotten drawer in my old roll-top desk, hidden beneath old letters and trinkets. A secret only I knew. Mark, oblivious, continued his slow, methodical takeover. He started talking about the future, about downsizing, about professional care. He even started showing up with brochures for assisted living facilities, each glossy picture a jab to my heart. Then came the call. His voice, once again, too cheerful, too artificial. "Dad," he said, "I've set up a meeting next Tuesday at my lawyer's office just to formalize your power of attorney. For your protection, of course." My protection. His words tasted like ash. He wanted to declare me incompetent, to legally seize control of my life, to silence me forever. "Of course, son," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within me. "That sounds perfectly reasonable." A wave of dread, mixed with a strange, fierce resolve, washed over me. The trap was set, but not just by him. The day of the meeting approached. Each sunrise felt heavy with anticipation. I went about my routines, watered the plants, read the newspaper. But underneath, a quiet storm brewed. I practiced my poker face in the mirror. My eyes, though older, still held a spark he thought he'd extinguished. The document, my secret weapon, lay hidden in my desk, waiting. Soon he would learn what confused truly meant. Soon the game would change. The quiet house felt heavier each day, not with dust, but with unspoken expectations. Mark's visits became less about checking on me and more about checking my financial statements. He'd hover over my shoulder as I opened mail. Dad, are you sure you paid that gas bill? He'd ask, his voice dripping with false concern. You know how easy it is to forget these things at your age. Forget? I remembered the exact date I paid every bill. I remembered the day he was born, the smell of his baby skin, the first time he called me Dad. Those memories were sharp, clearer than the lines on his face when he frowned at my bank statement. One afternoon, he brought over a stack of documents. Dad, he began, pulling up a chair too close. We need to talk about your will and your medical directives. He tapped the papers with a pen. It's just prudent, for your own protection. I looked at the documents. They looked official. They felt heavy. My heart felt heavier still. I saw the words, Power of Attorney, printed boldly on one page. My son, my flesh and blood, was asking me to sign away my control. What exactly does this mean, Mark? I asked, keeping my voice steady. My hands, though, felt a tremor. He waved a dismissive hand. Oh, just a formality. So if something were to happen, I could take care of things. Pay your bills, manage your investments, make sure you're looked after properly. Looked after? The phrase echoed, like a child or an invalid. Exactly, he said too quickly. You wouldn't want to be a burden, would you? And honestly, Dad, sometimes you seem a little overwhelmed, a bit confused. The word hung in the air, a poisoned dart. Confused. He had used it before. Little slips of the tongue, I'd thought. Now it was a deliberate accusation. I pushed the papers back towards him gently. I need time to read these, Mark, thoroughly. He frowned. Dad, it's straightforward. I even had my lawyer draft them up. He's very reputable. My lawyer, I stated, will need to review them first. His face stiffened. Your lawyer? Dad, you haven't seen Mr. Henderson in years. He probably doesn't even remember you. My guy is current, up to date. Nevertheless, I insisted, it's standard practice. He sighed, a dramatic put-upon sound. Fine, but don't take too long. Time is of the essence with these things. He gathered the papers, not bothering to hide his irritation. That night, sleep eluded me. The word confused gnawed at me. Was I? Was I truly losing my mind? Or was he trying to convince me I was? I walked through the house, turning on lights, touching familiar objects, my wife's favorite armchair, the photo of us on our honeymoon, my college diploma on the wall. They were all there, solid, real. So was my memory of them. The next morning I made a call, not to Mr. Henderson, but to a lawyer I had discreetly researched myself, a lawyer who specialized in elder law, someone independent of Mark. I didn't tell Mark about my meeting. He continued his campaign of subtle undermining. He'd call my sister, Aunt Carol, and casually mention, Dad forgot his glasses again, or couldn't remember where he put the remote. Aunt Carol, bless her heart, would call me, her voice laced with worry. Arthur, are you all right? Mark said you seemed a bit off. It was a slow, insidious poison. He was isolating me, painting a picture of a fading old man, a man who needed protection, a man who needed his strong, capable son to take over. He even tried to take my car keys one evening. Dad, I really think I should drive you to the store from now on. The traffic is getting worse, and he trailed off, implying my driving skills were deteriorating. I held on to the keys tighter. I'm perfectly capable, Mark. Of course you are, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. But it's just safer. He began intercepting my mail, claiming he was sorting it for me. He'd opened bills, even personal letters, Just making sure you don't miss anything important, Dad. The privacy I cherished, the independence I had fought to maintain all my life, was being systematically dismantled. I felt like a bird in a cage, the bars closing in, one by one. The lawyer I found, Mrs. Davies, was kind but direct. She listened patiently to my story. Mr. Miller, she said, her gaze steady, it sounds like your son is attempting to establish a power of attorney without your full informed consent, and perhaps even trying to have you declared incompetent. My stomach clenched. Incompetent? The word felt like a punch to the gut. It's a common tactic, she explained. If he can demonstrate to a court that you are not capable of managing your own affairs, he could be granted guardianship. Or, more simply, if he can convince you to sign a durable POA, he has immediate control. But I am capable, I stated, perhaps too emphatically. She smiled gently. I believe you, and your actions confirm it. Seeking legal counsel on your own behalf is a strong indicator of competence. We worked quietly, methodically. I provided her with all the information she needed. She drafted new documents. My documents. A new will, carefully outlining my wishes, and most importantly, my own durable power of attorney, naming an executor I trusted completely, not Mark, someone who would genuinely look after my interests, not their own. I signed the papers, my hand steady. This wasn't about revenge, I told myself. It was about survival, about dignity, about ensuring my hard-earned life wasn't plundered by someone I had loved and raised. Mark, oblivious to my quiet rebellion, kept pushing for the meeting with his lawyer. Dad, he said one morning, I've scheduled an appointment for us next Tuesday to get all those papers sorted. My lawyer, Mr. Thompson, is expecting us. Tuesday, I repeated, a small knowing tremor running through me. Yes, sharp at 10. Don't want to be late. He's a busy man. Mark's tone was jovial, almost celebratory. He thought he had won. He thought I was finally yielding. I looked at him, truly looked at him. My son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to tie his shoes, to stand up for himself. Now he was trying to push me down. I'll be there, Mark, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. A storm was brewing, but I was ready. I had my umbrella and my shield. The days leading up to Tuesday were a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Mark called several times to remind me, each call a veiled command. Don't forget your reading glasses, Dad. Make sure you have your ID. Each word was designed to reinforce his narrative of my helplessness. I spent my evenings reviewing my own documents, reading every clause, understanding every word. Mrs. Davies had ensured everything was crystal clear. My chosen executor, my trusted former neighbor, Sarah, had already agreed. She was a woman of integrity, who had seen me through difficult times, unlike Mark. I remembered the countless times I had provided for Mark, the college tuition, the down payment for his first house, the loans I never asked to be repaid. I had given him my time, my wisdom, my unconditional love, and this was his repayment. Tuesday arrived. The morning air was crisp, almost taunting. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one I usually reserved for weddings or special occasions. This, in its own way, was a special occasion, a reckoning. Mark pulled up to the curb exactly on time. He jumped out, eager, opening the passenger door for me. "Ready, Dad?" he asked, a triumphant glint in his eyes. I nodded, stepping into the car. I buckled my seatbelt, feeling a quiet strength settle over me. He drove to a modern office building downtown, the kind with glass walls and a sleek, intimidating lobby. We went up to the 10th floor. Thompson and Associates. The frosted glass door read. Mark pushed it open with a flourish. as if entering his own kingdom. The receptionist, a young woman with a perfectly coiffed bun, smiled politely. "Mr. Miller, Mr. Thompson is expecting you." Mark beamed. "He's very efficient, Dad. Gets straight to the point." We were ushered into a large, well-appointed office. Mr. Thompson, a man with a sharp suit and an even sharper gaze, stood to greet us. "Mr. Miller, a pleasure. And young Mark." He nodded to Mark, a subtle acknowledgement of their prior dealings. We sat. Mark took the chair opposite the desk, gesturing for me to take the one beside him, as if he was presenting me. Mr. Thompson opened a file. "So, Mr. Miller," he began, his voice smooth, "Mark has informed me of your desire to put your affairs in order, to ensure your future care and the proper management of your estate." He looked at me, but his words were clearly for Mark, a confirmation of their agreed narrative. Mark leaned forward, a smug look on his face. "Dad's been a little forgetful lately. You know, just making sure everything is handled." My heart hammered against my ribs. Here it was, the moment he would call me confused to an official, to a lawyer, to a man who could strip away my autonomy with a stroke of a pen. The ultimate humiliation. I took a slow, deep breath, tasting the metallic tang of anticipation. I looked at my son, then at Mr. Thompson, who was already sliding a document across the table. A power of attorney. His power of attorney. "This document," Mr. Thompson explained, "will grant Mark the authority to make financial and medical decisions on your behalf, should you become incapacitated. It's for your own good, Mr. Miller, to prevent any future complications." Mark nodded vigorously, urging me with his eyes to just sign it. "And," Mr. Thompson continued, "Mark mentioned some concerns about your current cognitive abilities, Mr. Miller. He believes it would be prudent to have a full assessment done." Cognitive abilities. The code word for senile, for incompetent, the final nail in the coffin of my independence. A quiet rage began to simmer within me. Not a wild, uncontrolled anger, but a cold, hard resolve. They thought I was a broken old man. They thought I was confused. They were about to find out exactly how clear my mind truly was. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Thompson," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And yours, Mark." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "But there's been a slight misunderstanding." Mark's smug expression faltered. He looked at me, a flicker of unease in his eyes. I reached into my inner jacket pocket. My fingers closed around the familiar, crisp papers. "You see," I continued, pulling out the folded documents, "I already have a power of attorney, a very carefully considered one, and I had it drafted by my lawyer." I placed the documents on the table, not gently, but with a decisive thud, directly over the papers Mr. Thompson had presented. The name Mrs. Davies was clearly visible at the top. The date, only last week. Mark stared at the papers, his jaw slackening. His face, once triumphant, was now a mask of shock and disbelief. He had underestimated me, and that was his biggest mistake. The mahogany door felt heavy, cold under my fingertips. A weight settled in my chest, a familiar ache. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a battleground. My son, Robert, was already inside, perched on an expensive leather chair. He offered a strained smile, a performance for the lawyer, Mr. Davies. "Father, you're here," Robert said, his voice saccharine. "Good. We can finally get this sorted." Mr. Davies was a man of precise movements, his suit sharp, his glasses glinting. He gestured to the chair opposite Robert. I sat, placing my old leather briefcase gently on the floor beside me. Inside, it held my shield, my sword. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Robert launched into his rehearsed speech. He talked about my welfare, my future. He spoke of preventative measures and ensuring my comfort. Each word was a calculated jab, thinly veiled concern. Then the questions began. Mr. Davies, following Robert's lead, asked about my finances, my health, my daily routine. He inquired about bills, about shopping, about my memory. I answered calmly, factually. I spoke of my investments, my bank accounts, the small garden I tended daily. I mentioned the novels I read, the news I followed. Robert kept interrupting. He forgets things, Mr. Davies. Little things, but they add up. He chuckled, a brittle, dismissive sound. Last week, he almost left the stove on. A lie, a slight exaggeration, spun into a deliberate falsehood. I had turned it off, double checked, as I always did. I met Robert's gaze. He looked away quickly, a flicker of guilt, quickly masked by superiority. He's been rather confused lately, Robert pressed on, about the house, about his money. I just want to make sure he's protected. The word hung in the air. Confused. A label, a judgment, a weapon. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. My blood ran cold, then simmered. Confused. So that was his play. To strip me of my mind, to declare me unfit, to take everything I had built, everything I was. He wanted to erase my judgment, my decisions, my very identity. I remembered the countless times Robert had belittled my opinions, dismissed my advice, mocked my habits. This wasn't new. This was the culmination of years of disrespect, festering into this outright assault on my dignity. I thought of the day, weeks ago, when I first suspected this path. The way he probed about my bank details, the casual questions about my medical history, the subtle pressure to simplify my life. I had seen the shadow in his eyes, the hunger for control. That's when I made my own call. A different lawyer, a discreet meeting, a careful discussion, my own plan. Mr. Davies nodded, making notes. He seemed to accept Robert's version of events with an unsettling neutrality. He presented a stack of papers. This is a standard power of attorney document, Mr. Johnson. It would grant Robert the authority to manage your financial and medical affairs. He slid the pen across the polished desk. Just needs your signature. Robert leaned forward, eager. It's for the best, Father. Really. It takes the burden off you. You won't have to worry about a thing. His smile was wide, triumphant. He thought he had won. He thought I was cornered, helpless. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't senile. I was perhaps tired. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of being treated like a relic. My hand didn't tremble as I reached for my briefcase. My fingers found the cool metal clasp. Click. The sound was soft, yet it echoed in the silent room. Robert's smile faltered. Mr. Davies paused, pen hovering over his notepad. I drew out a crisp, official-looking document. It wasn't the one Mr. Davies had prepared. It was my own power of attorney, signed, sealed, witnessed, and dated, weeks before Robert had even started his charade. I placed it on the table, not pushing it, just setting it there. The paper was heavy, resolute, my name, clear and bold, and below it, the name of the trusted executor I had chosen, someone Robert knew nothing about. Robert's eyes widened. The color drained from his face. His jaw went slack. What is this?" he stammered. His voice was no longer confident, no longer rehearsed. I looked at him, then at Mr. Davies. "This, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice steady, "is my real power of attorney. The truth, cold and unyielding, lay between us, and the game, for Robert, had just changed." The polished door to the lawyer's office felt heavy. I pushed it open slowly. Michael was already there, perched on the edge of a luxurious leather chair. He had that smug look, the one that said he'd already won. He saw me, and a condescending smile tugged at his lips. Dad, he said too casually, glad you made it. Don't want to keep Mr. Thompson waiting, do we? Mr. Thompson, a man with kind eyes and a sharp suit, stood and offered a hand. Mr. Davies, please, have a seat. I settled into the chair opposite Michael. My heart was a drum in my chest, but my face felt calm, almost serene. I'd practiced this moment 1,000 times in my mind. Michael cleared his throat. So, Mr. Thompson, as we discussed, he began, looking at me with a pitying glance. Dad's been a bit forgetful lately, misplacing things, confusing dates. He even forgot my birthday last month. A lie. I'd sent him a card and a check as always. He just hadn't acknowledged it. Mr. Thompson nodded gravely. I understand your concerns, Michael. It's just with the house and the investments, Michael continued, warming to his performance. We, as a family, feel it's time to take proactive steps, for Dad's own good, of course. He pushed a folder across the table towards the lawyer. I've had a power of attorney drawn up. It grants me full authority over Dad's finances and medical decisions to ensure he's looked after properly. He slid a glance my way. A challenge, a triumph. He thought he had me cornered. His eyes gleamed with anticipated victory. He thought he was. So clever. Mr. Thompson picked up Michael's document. He began to leaf through it. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating. Michael leaned back, a picture of a dutiful, concerned son. And Mr. Davies, Mr. Thompson said, looking at me, do you understand the nature of this document Michael has presented? I met his gaze steadily. I do. Michael interjected, he might say he does, Mr. Thompson, but I'm worried he doesn't fully grasp the implications. This isn't about taking anything from him. It's about protecting him. Protecting me? He was protecting his future inheritance. He was protecting his easy access to my money. Michael, I said, my voice steady, surprising myself. Let Mr. Thompson speak. Michael's confident smirk wavered just a fraction. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. He looked from Michael to me, then back to the document. He sighed softly. Michael, I appreciate your initiative in ensuring your father's well-being. However, he paused. Michael leaned forward, eager for the lawyer to confirm his new authority. Mr. Davies already has a valid power of attorney in place. Mr. Thompson's words were calm, but they hit the air like thunder. Michael's jaw dropped. His face, so recently smug, went slack. What? That's impossible. I spoke to him. He never mentioned anything. I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. This was the moment. The hour. Indeed, Mr. Thompson continued, turning to me. Mr. Davies, would you like to present your document? I reached into my briefcase. The same briefcase I'd brought to countless business meetings, countless family gatherings, where I'd sat quietly, listening. I pulled out a crisp, sealed envelope. Inside was my own power of attorney, dated 6 months ago, before Michael's little scheme had even begun to fully form. I slid it across the table. It landed with a soft thud next to Michael's now useless papers. I decided some time ago, I said, my voice gaining strength, that I needed to protect myself, not from my own confusion, but from those who might try to exploit it. Mr. Thompson opened my envelope, scanned the document. His kind eyes held a flicker of admiration. This is a comprehensive and legally sound power of attorney, Michael. It was drafted and executed by Mr. Davies in full possession of his faculties. Michael spluttered. But who is it for? Who did he give it to? He looked at me, a desperate, frantic energy in his eyes. I assigned it to myself, I said, with clear instructions for what happens if I truly become incapacitated. Instructions that supersede any other document. My gaze was firm, unwavering. and I named an executor for my will. That is not you, Michael." The color drained from Michael's face. He looked utterly bewildered, like a child whose favorite toy had just been snatched away. He had called me confused. He had underestimated me. He had treated me like a senile old man. "But, Dad, you can't," he stammered. "This is insane. You're making a huge mistake." "The mistake, Michael," I said, leaning forward slightly, "was yours. You assumed I was a fool. You assumed I hadn't been watching. You assumed I hadn't been preparing." Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "Michael, as Mr. Davis's legal representative for this document, I can confirm that this POA is valid, and it means that your document, while well-intentioned, holds no legal authority over your father's affairs." Michael pushed himself out of his chair, knocking it back with a loud thump. "This is a joke, a cruel joke. You're clearly not well, Dad. This is exactly what I was talking about." His voice was rising, frantic. "On the contrary, Michael," I said, remaining seated, feeling utterly, wonderfully lucid. "I've never been clearer." I looked him straight in the eye. "I've been thinking about this for a very long time, about how you treated me, about how you've always seen me as a resource, not a father." His face was a mask of furious, impotent rage. He stared at me, then at Mr. Thompson, then at my document lying on the table like a death sentence to his plans. "Now," I continued, my voice calm, but with an edge of steel, "about the house you've been so eager to get your hands on. I've decided to put it on the market next month. And about my finances, I'll be consolidating them into an account that only I can access. Your allowance will of course cease." Michael gaped. The house was his primary target. He'd talked about renovating it, selling it, using the money. "You can't," he choked out. "You're punishing me." "I am simply taking back control of my life, Michael," I said, the words feeling like pure freedom. "Something I should have done a long time ago." He stood there, frozen, his grand scheme shattered. He had come to the lawyer's office to strip me of my dignity, my autonomy. Instead, he had walked into his own reckoning. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Michael's ragged breathing. This was not just a legal victory. It was a reclaiming of myself, a quiet, profound revolution. The battle for my independence had been won, but the path ahead, the path of truly living again, was just beginning.